Hello fellow OSB enthusiasts, my name is Jen. Welcome to my cook along. I have a small admission to make before we do this video, which is that when I looked in my freezers to do this cook along, I thought I would find a pork shoulder and do some lovely pork recipes, something like that. But I appear to be, this is the last bit of OSB pork I have in my freezers until my next girls go next month. I have one packet of OSB mince left. However, that means that we can do one of my absolute favourites today, and we're going to cook a lasagna with both homegrown beef and homegrown Oxford Sandy and Black pork today. I love cooking lasagna. It's very budget friendly. It uses up lots of veg you might have in the fridge. I'm doing quite a simple one today with no additions, but you can chuck in carrots if you want to, peas, peppers, any kind of veg that is lying around will go really nicely in your meat sauce, so you can just add as you go. It's very healthy if you choose to make it so. It's nutritious and frankly it's delicious. So let's have a look at the ingredients and we'll get cooking. Ingredients wise, you will have to excuse the fact that my measurements are always quite vague because I cook with what I have in front of me, not particularly to any measurements. Let's start with the star of the show. We have here our Oxford Sandy and Black mince paired with my homegrown beef mince, which I'm very excited to have back. I have 2 onions for that amount of mince. I did 1 red and 1 white for no other reason than I like the colours. I have 2 tins of chopped tomatoes, which I may use all of, I may use a little less, depending on how the sauce looks. I would usually add a tomato puree, but I don't have any, so we're not going to do that. And then we have about 5 cloves of garlic. Add as much or as little garlic as you like. Excuse me. I don't think you can ever have too much garlic. And some seasoning. For the bechamel sauce, we are only going to need 3 ingredients, and they are butter. Unsalted is fine. I'm using salted, but most people would say use unsalted and then add salt to taste. Some totally Welsh full milk because we are in Wales, and some bog standard plain flour. Okay, we'll start with the bechamel sauce. I'm using about 1/4 of a block of butter, and I think that will make a good amount of sauce for the lasagna size that I'm doing. You want it on quite a low heat to start with because you want to melt the butter but definitely not burn the butter. I'm just going to grab my spatula. I find if you stir the butter while it's melting, it is less likely to start burning. Sorry. Right, my butter is fully melted. Let's start adding some flour. I will show you what it looks like inside this pot in a minute. Okay. Take that out of there. Flour. And with your roux, you want it as a sort of doughy consistency, so it forms a bit of a ball. And if it's too dry, you add more butter, and if it's too wet, add more flour. You can always take a bit of the roux out of the pot if you think you've got far too much for the sauce you're going to make. So get the roux right and then worry about your amounts when it's done. Stirring in the flour, and it's starting to form a sort of breadcrumby texture. Let me just see if I can show you this. See, it's sort of like dry breadcrumby, so I might add a little bit more butter. So I've added a bit more butter to my roux because it was a bit dry, and now you can see that it's a good sort of doughy consistency, and if I push it up against the side of the pan it stays where I put it. So, I don't know if you can see that. No, there we go. It holds the shape the spatula puts in it, like that. Don't over brown your roux. I've taken mine off the heat now because otherwise you won't end up with a white sauce, you'll end up with a brown sauce. I've also put my oven on to 185 degrees, heating up, ready for our lasagna to go in when it's cooked. I'm going to take out a third of this roux because I've got too much, and I'm going to probably pop it in the freezer for next week when I'll use it again. So, the next step in our bechamel white sauce is adding the milk. Don't add it all at once. Don't add it in big glugs. You will get lumpy sauce. It's a slow, tedious process, and if you have to nip off to do other things for the 5 minutes it's going to take you to do this, don't start, because you can't leave it from this point until it is a white sauce. So you've got your roux in there like we just saw, and I will start pouring milk in. Again, rubbish with the quantities, sorry. Some milk, but a little dribble, not enough to overpower the roux you've got in there, and then you want to just stir it slowly and combine it all with the butter and flour mixture that you've got in there, so the dough will get thinner, and everything needs to be combined together until the next bit of milk goes in. If it's thickening a bit quickly, take it off the heat and stir it off the heat. The heat is what's adding the thickening to the sauce. So the more heat you get, the thicker it will get. So you can see it doesn't look like, at this point, get this angle right, it doesn't look like I've been adding milk because it's all combined nicely. I apologise for the camera angles, it's quite difficult doing this on your own and showing you everything. Keep adding milk. And it really is a little bit at a time. Combine it all in. It might splash, I'm quite a splashy cook. I do enjoy this bit because if you get it to the saucy point without any lumps, it feels like a nice achievement. Like when you're making a good gravy. This is the base for any cheese sauce, by the way, for those of you that haven't cooked with a roux or a white sauce before. Basically, if you want a really nice cheese sauce, just take this when it's done and add a load of cheese, maybe a bit of mustard and some salt and pepper, and you'll have a real yummy cheese sauce you can do anything with. Macaroni cheese, obviously with OSB bacon on top. I'll give you another look at this just now. Oh, it's looking quite good. You basically got a video of me stirring a pan. I like a little bit of pepper in my bechamel sauce, so as you can see I've added some black pepper, and there's just a pinch of Maldon salt going in there, and we'll keep stirring. I won't make you watch the entire thickening process, so I'll keep stirring this until it has become bechamel sauce, and then I'll come back to you. Can you see that lovely consistency that it's got now? That's making me really happy. I think I could just drink this. So hopefully you can see that this sauce has really started to thicken up now, and that looks to be a nice consistency for our bechamel layer in our lasagna. I'm about to do something very non-traditional, and I'm going to put a handful of grated mozzarella in it because I want to, and it tastes good, and there is nothing that's not improved by a handful of grated mozzarella, in my opinion. There it goes. I'll stir that in. I think we can call that bechamel sauce done. I'm going to use this pan again for my meat, so I'll just pour it into a jug and leave it to cool down a little bit for when we're ready for it. This is a good way of trying to keep tidy while you cook when there are other people watching you. So I have washed up my pan and my spatula. The dairy products are back in the fridge. The bechamel sauce is waiting on the side, and we are ready for our bolognese sauce. It's our lasagna sauce. We're not doing a bolognese. It's very similar. Start with a little bit of oil in the pan. I'm using sunflower oil because that was what was the cheapest in the supermarket today. And I'm going to fry off my onions until they're just sweated. Add my garlic, and then we're going to add the mince. Lovely colourful onions. I do love a red onion. They're just lovely. And I think they're a bit of a nicer, mellower flavour than a white onion. If you want a dish that needs onion, but you don't want a particularly punchy onion flavour, go for a red. But I like to mix them up. So they're just going into the pan. I'll find my spatula. Not a spatula, that's a knife. There we go. That's a new one. Give them a stir around, get them coated in the oil. I'll turn it down a bit because it's a bit sizzly. You don't want these to burn or brown particularly or caramelise. We want them to soften and start to go translucent. That's what we're aiming for. Turn it down a bit. So my gas is quite temperamental, but I'd far rather that than electric. I like to pop some herbs in whilst my onions are sweating. I'm using what have I got today? A pinch of Italian style seasoning. You can use basil and oregano. Sometimes I put a bit of thyme in, but today we're going for a pre-made Italian seasoning flavour. It's in there. I've already put some pepper in, but I can't grind the pepper grinder whilst holding the phone, so you're not getting a video of that. And a little bit of Maldon salt here. We'll do some stock afterwards, but I think it gets the flavours going to get some spices in whilst you're starting. Some herbs, not spices, Jen. Yeah, what sort of spices? Right. Stir that all around, get them all coated in that lovely, now herby sunflower oil. Might be time to add some garlic. That can go in. It's quite a challenge doing this for other people because I tend to just grab things and not think too much about how I cook. I'm a taster. I like to taste as I go. So it's quite an adventure sharing my chaotic process with you lovely people. Now it is time to add our lovely mince. Look at that mixture of mince. I didn't used to use pork in a lasagna, and maybe about 2 years ago a friend of mine told me it was more traditional to have with pork, and I had lots of pork mince and I will never go back. It adds such a depth of flavour to your lasagnas that pork mince is 100% the way to go. So I like to take a bit of each and crumble it in. You can quite happily just pour it straight out of the packet, but I feel it doesn't clump as much if you break it in by hand. Obviously make sure your hands are nice and clean. So I like to...
Sorry, I'm having trouble connecting to the internet.
Alexa's having problems, sorry. If you're using a fair amount of meat like I am today, just make sure you combine your onions mix in as you go, because otherwise it's quite difficult in a pan like this to get it mixed in once you've got all of the meat in. And with the mince we just want to brown it off, really. It's going in there, it's getting mixed up with all those lovely herbs, some onion and some garlic. Getting browned off. I'm ready for some tomatoes. All the mince is in. Have a good stir and keep stirring it and turning it until it's all nicely browned off and you can't see any more red unbrowned bits of meat in there. And then I'm going to add some stock at this point. I'm not going to add wet stock. I'm going to crumble some OXO cubes directly onto the mince. I'm sure everybody knows this trick by now, but if you don't know it, it's great. OXO cube, if you squash it in the packet, it becomes powder and you don't have to crumble the actual cube. It's great. So I'm just going to pour these two over. So I've got 2 OXO cubes crumbled back down to powder, and I'm going to pour them in onto my mince mix. Show you how well that OXO cube trick works. You see how powdery that is. It's all just gone in. All the mince is now browned. Any bits of red you can see are red onion. I've combined all of that stock in. I'm not adding water to the stock because the meat produces some juice and the tomatoes produce quite a lot of juice, and I don't want to make my sauce too wet. If I feel like it needs a bit of water later, we can add that. If I feel like it's a bit wet, we can add a little bit of flour to thicken it up. So, but for now, no water in with the OXO cubes. Let's pour some tomatoes in. At this point, I would normally add maybe 1/3 of a tube of tomato puree, but I don't have it. And to be honest, the flavour of these two meats are really nice and full, and I don't think we need it to add any depth. As an alternative, you can add a bit of Lea & Perrins sauce or a bit of Worcester sauce if you want. That adds a nice bit of umami to it. I think I'm going for all of the 2 tins. I'm just going for it. There we go. Shake that there. Any tin tomatoes are fine. Herbs, no herbs, cheap, not cheap. At this point, they're all much of a muchness. I mean, obviously, really good quality tin tomatoes might taste a little bit better. I don't believe too much in it. Look at that. For a nice, meaty, thick, chunky sauce. I'm going to add a little bit of wine now. Wine is definitely optional, but I quite like a bit of wine. Just a splosh. Stir that around. Oh, I'm getting excited for dinner. So our meat sauce has had a chance to simmer. We can get some of those lovely flavours in together. I am a definite taster when it comes to food. I've had a fair few teaspoons full of this as we go along, and season to taste. If you don't like tasting, just put in what you feel, but I am a big fan of tasting things as I go and seeing what I feel like it needs. I don't think this sauce needs any particular thickening up or thinning down. Some people prefer a slightly less chunky sauce for lasagna. This is, the tomatoes are quite chunky. I've chopped the onions quite rough. I quite like it chunky, but there is nothing to say that you can't make it with a passata instead of chopped tomatoes, and finely chop your veg and have a really nice smooth sauce. I was going to put carrots in, but I didn't, sorry. Alright, let's put it all together. In fact, I'm just going to add a little bit of flour because it could probably lose a little bit. So let's show you what flour does. See the wet as the top of the sauce. Just pop a little bit of, not much, just a sprinkle of flour. Maybe a teaspoonful, maybe a little bit more. Stir it in and it just binds and thickens the sauce up a bit. So you can see now it's not as wet by a long way as it was before the addition of the flour, and as it heats through a bit it will continue to thicken it up a bit. Right, that works the same with most sauce dishes. You'll probably know all of this. I don't know why Right, let's make the lasagna. Here's my lasagna dish. I've put a little bit of oil in the bottom in the hopes of stopping my bottom sheets sticking. And what we're going to do is we're just going to layer lasagna pasta onto the bottom of the dish. It doesn't quite fit very well in this dish, but it doesn't matter. It still tastes good. I like to break up the sheets to fit to the edges, so I'm just snapping some. Again, we're not too precious about shapes in this house. Next job is we need a good dollop. Now you want to put your things closer together than I have here because I'm going to drip. But you want to put a nice layer of your meat sauce. Onto the bottom here. Pat it down, and the juice from the sauces will cook your lasagna sheets. You don't want to make it too dry a sauce because otherwise you'll end up with a very dry lasagna. I've lost my lasagna sheets. Prizes for finding them. Oh, they're here. So we make another layer, and you don't need to go in the same direction. You can go in whatever direction takes your fancy. Pop that down. I do hope my sporadic filming is not making you too seasick. broken piece to fill in the gaps. And I do some of the bechamel sauce. I like to do a little just bechamel layer, but I'm not going to do it today. Well, no, I am. I'm sure there's a far better way to layer this than I'm doing. Window paper pasting. I believe that actually the traditional layering system is red sauce, then white sauce, then pasta, then red sauce, then white sauce, then pasta, topped off with white sauce. But I quite like having a layer of pasta at the bottom. It kind of makes it dish up nicer. So I'm doing a triple layer here. This is going to be a white sauce, red sauce, white sauce pasta layer, and then we'll do a traditional layer on top of that if we've got enough. So bear with. One more broken sheet coming up. I forgot the white sauce layer. Hang on, I'm going to take these off and pretend that never happened. No errors to see here. Nothing to see here. I'm not completely flustered by cooking for people on the internet. Okay, we're going to put these slightly grubby sheets back on. Oh, it started so well, didn't it, people? Okay, there's our halfies. And then what did we say? Red sauce, white sauce, pasta. We can do this. We're nearly there. So I'll get this done and then I will show you at the end. So I'm going to do red sauce, white sauce, pasta, and then white sauce on top of the pasta. So here's one I didn't make earlier yet. One lasagna ready for the oven. I'm going to pop him in for 20 minutes. Then I'm going to add some more grated mozzarella to the top and leave him for another 20 minutes. And I will show you what he looks like when he comes out. Here is one oven fresh lasagna. A lovely cheesy top. I'll cut it and then let you see inside, but I can't do that with one hand. And there we have it. One steaming and delicious looking OSB pork lasagna ready for my dinner, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my cook along. I hope you enjoyed it. Happy cooking. Make sure when it's pork, it's OSB pork.